So I declare the meeting open at 5:02 p.m. This is a special meeting of Light Regional Council. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge the Ngadjuri and Kaurna people, the traditional owners on the land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. I believe everybody is in attendance, and on that basis, there are no apologies, leave of absence or non-attendance for this evening. All right, councillors. So, in essence, the purpose of this evening's meeting is to deal with one matter that was adjourned from the ordinary council meeting, which is the release of the annual business plan for public consultation, which is the second item in the agenda. The first item in the agenda is the future projects roadmap. There's a comprehensive report that's been put together by the staff. Is there any update to that report, Egan, or anyone else? Kyron? No. Councillors, do you have any questions about this report for decision? Councillor Simon.
Yeah, thanks to the chair. There's a couple of questions. One would be 2F. It talks about the 300,000 for resheeting of Towards Road, and I think it's entirely needed. We need to do something about that road, but I'm just wondering about the payment for it. So I think we talked about this before, and I'm not really sure how this is going to work out, because I think we were thinking that the people that ruin the road should be paying for it, sort of thing. And it's pretty clear that it's coming from the increased traffic through to all the development and SA Water and all the contractors working on it. So I'm just wondering, this looks like we're going to pay for it. So is there a way that we can offload that payment to somebody else?
Thanks, Councillor Simon. I think it would be right to assume that this is coming, this being funded by the council, but is there any further sort of comment that can be made in response to Councillor Simon's question from the staff? Kyron?
Yeah, through the chair. So it'll be a council expense unless someone else does the project. So I guess the administration's recommendation is that council carries out the works. There may be future opportunities to recover costs to repair roads or resheet them. I guess we don't have any sort of legal sort of opinion on how we'd go about that to recover costs due to damages. So until such time as we sort of have that information, we'll be able to bring that forward for council's consideration.
Councillor Simon?
Yeah, so I mean, I suspect, we do have to pay for it begin with, but if there's a chance that we can get it from somewhere else, I think that would be an important thing that we should look into. And I think when we last talked about this, like if I as a contractor destroy a curb or whatever while I'm doing work, then it's not that council picks up the tab to redo the curb. They might do it and then they bill me, or I have to do it myself. So I don't know why this doesn't apply here, but definitely it needs to be in the budget now so that this gets done. Then the second question, if I may, is just, and it's just, I'm sure there's a good explanation for that. I just skipped it somehow. There's in the long-term plan, it's just that steep increase. So 0.3, it starts with 170, which I know what that is for the 25-26, and then 370 for the next year. Makes sense. And then suddenly it's an increase of like 3 million and another increase for another million. So is that not 100% clear on, if I could have an explanation again, I suppose, why that steep increase and where that comes from?
Thank you, Councillor Simon. Megan or Kyron, can you respond to Councillor Simon's question?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. The recommendation, Councillor Simon, you're talking about 0.3 and 0.4. If you refer to page, I don't have page numbers on my hard copy, there's a table which is under a heading called Future Projects Roadmap Summary. If you refer to that table, that is what is in a long-term financial plan. Those figures align. So the 170 for year one, 370 for year two, 3.37 mil is because of the increase to Clare Road, and 4.5 mil again is Clare Road.
Thank you very much. And that increased funding would come from borrowing. Is that?
This report is relative to what we are borrowing, which is outside of the renewal program, the like-for-like program that was the last week's meeting. This is any extras that we want to do.
Thank you.
You happy with that, Councillor Simon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Collin?
I just see here that we decide not to borrow any money for this financial year in the road upgrade program. Is that right?
Sorry, Councillor Collin,
Oh,
you're saying we haven't borrowed money?
no. So further in the report, when it goes on about this has said that we're not going to. I'm wondering whether we could borrow because it was at one stage that we're going to pay the CAD off, the 8.5, and then maybe buy another 3.5 to get us to 12. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity we could borrow 1.5 and do. I've got a couple of roads I'd like to suggest, but is that not the time to do that?
Megan?
Through the chair, thank you. This report is, so what you're talking about, Councillor Collin, is actually in the budget report, which Hafiz will talk about later. So that's the long-term financial plan. He'll talk about all the borrowings. This report is purely what is in the long-term financial plan at the moment, based on previous meetings that we had and an indication of what could and couldn't be funded.
Thanks, Megan. I think it's important to keep in mind at this point that quite a lot of work's been put into getting us to this point, and that we deferred this item from last week. So I think if we're going to contemplate really significant changes to this, I think it's going to be very difficult for us to meet our timeframe commitments in terms of public consultation and having a clear plan communicated to the community. So, but just to deal with Councillor Collins' question, so in terms of borrowing, a desire to borrow, that would be in the next recommendation, yeah?
That's right. But
Yeah.
if we do borrow the money, it's going to have
An impact on this.
That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
So that's why I brought it up now, rather than I'd like to bring it up later. But
Yep.
I just it's going to have a material effect on this recommendation. If what? Yeah, but anyway, that's the other thing I'd like. I do agree with Simon because I see Cat kind of coming in the bottom now. They're doing a lot of work on the bottom of Torts Road. They got a lot of stuff coming in there. SA Water destroyed. SA. The expectation of us having to pay for the lot, I don't think is quite right. And I think that, we're going to, if we do a separate rate, is there any way we can recover some of this money that we're committing now? Or because we're going to have to identify amount of money that we've spent to do this work and in the future. So it might be $5 million we're going to have to do, how are we going to, can we get some of this retrospectively?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question and a fair comment. Kyron or Craig, Richard, has anyone got a view on whether, to the extent that we contribute to the maintenance of Torts Road and to the extent that that maintenance is caused or contributed by the development going on in that area, that a separate rate could be applied to recover those costs?
Yeah, through the chair. So we haven't received any additional advice on that matter since that question was asked at the last meeting.
I didn't ask that. Retrospective of it has been asked, I don't think, has it? So I think it's the money retrospectively, like if we spend it now, can you get it retrospective? That might be another question to ask the lawyer as well.
Thanks, Councillor Collins. So just to round that out, are we when we do go and obtain the advice, are we able to include Councillor Collins' questions about a retrospective? Yep. Thank you. Okay, councillors, are there any other questions on the future projects roadmap recommendation? In that case, do I have a mover of this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Simon. Second, I think might have been Councillor Fabio just in time there. Councillor Dean, thank you. Councillor Simon, would you like to speak? No. Councillor Fabio? No problem. Anyone else like to speak on this motion, councillors? In that case, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, councillors. So the second recommendation for this evening is a recommendation to advance the annual business plan and budget as contained in the agenda to public consultation, subject to minor formatting and grammatical amendments. Is there any update, Hafiz, or where is he? There he is. Over to you.
Through the chair. So far there's not any update. So I think the information that we have got is kind of current. But again, during the time of the public consultation, there could be some changes. And also one of the major changes that's going to happen that I'm pretty sure everybody's aware is that we're going to get a major update on the valuation around 30th of May. So of course that will change a few things. But other than that, we're happy to go through the report. Yeah.
So I know it might be hard to predict, Hafiz, but would we anticipate any significant change in revenue arising from the rating update, or would it be immaterial in the scheme of things?
Yep, through the chair, there could be changes to the revenue based on the the new title that's going to be released, plus based on the changes in the valuation. However, if today we lock the revenue target, which is CPI on the top of just the CPI, which is 3%, that way any changes that would come, which would occur within the rate in the dollar, within the caps, and we can have that conversation. I was having a chat with Richard today and even yesterday with Councillor Collin that once we have that valuation come in, and before the next ARC meeting, which is on the 10th of June, so we would have like 10 days, we could have a 1 day of information session just on that discussion where all the elected members will have the opportunity to share their concerns and share their ideas in terms of what percentage of the rebate and what percentage of the, all that sort of stuff, raising the dollar, for example, that would be the best time, because if we have the discussion today, it would be irrelevant if the changes are very significant on the 30th of May. That's why if you would have read I'm pretty sure you would have read the report, all of you, it doesn't lock us in any of that area in terms of, the only thing that will lock us today is going to be the revenue target. So, yeah.
All right, thanks, Hafiz. Councillors, do you have any questions in relation to the reports or the recommendation? Councillor Simon?
Yeah, through the chair. First, I think it's a really good report. I think in all those 6 years now leading these reports, I think it's one of the best ones. So good on you. It's very concise and just says everything really clearly. I think that the one thing that I was just wondering, and it's just something for discussion in my opinion, is that when we're looking at the land use, the rate in the dollars for vacant land, we're going to actually, the proposal is to reduce that rate in the dollar figure by 3.3%, and there's been some articles lately about councils in south of Adelaide and whatever that actually going the exact opposite way to stop land banking, to incentivize building and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just wondering if there's a discussion we should have or could have about actually not going down, actually going the other way, actually maybe increase the rate in the dollars for vacant land.
Yep, through the chair, I think it's a very good point, and you are 100% right that usually the idea behind the Vacant land is so that the rate in the dollar is higher so that people are encouraged to start the construction. However, if you read the one part of the report, it does explain that the vacant land have substantially property valuation increases. So we are just minimizing a little bit. It's not going to impact too much. But because when we had that information session last time, I had that proposed rates in the dollar, which was subject to change. So I have reduced residential by 4.5% based on the feedback that I received, and primary production by 4.5% as well, and vacant land 3.3%. But the other ones have gone up by 3%, which is the CPI. So this is, as of today, would be my suggestion. But again, once we get the the valuation in May, we could look into that. But I think 3.3 is only because of the fact that the valuation has gone up significantly for that vacant land category that use. Yeah.
So just remind me, Hafiz, so are the vacant undeveloped parcels, are they also subject to the cap?
Well, if we decide to do that, we can go to that part, but I think the assumption that we have got is the primary production and the residential. Yep. And for the purpose of this draft, annual business plan that we have got, we have assumed 10%, and I know it could slightly go up to 13% or 14% for residential, but I'm not going to have that conversation today because there's no point. We'll be better off having that conversation after the May valuation is incorporated. Yep.
Yeah, and the reason I ask, I think that's important to note because if the undeveloped vacant land isn't subject to the cap, then that's also an incentive for it to be progressed to
That's right.
a usable parcel.
For
right?
development and construction. Yep. But no, the point that Councillor Simon raised is it's a very common within the local government. They try to encourage people to start developing, otherwise they're going to holding the land for like years and there's nothing going on. So yes, the in principle, yes, it's correct. But again, if you look at the overall rates, they're still higher than the other one. Yep.
Councillors, are there any other questions just in relation to this recommendation? All right, so just before we get to movers, seconders, and I've received a motion without notice just prior to the council meeting from Councillor Allison. The effect of the motion without notice would have, I would say, some effect upon some of the cost assumptions in here. So I'm going to read what it says, Karen. It's quite brief, and then I think we can discuss whether or not it sits as an amendment to this recommendation for simplicity, or whether it sits as a separate motion without notice that sits alongside this resolution. So, Councillor Allison, did you want me to read this, or do you want to? Yep. So the motion without notice reads that council reduce the economic development budget by $150,000 to take that reduction amount out of cost centre ED 310 tourism development without cutting cost centre 28080 donations and 320,200 contributions. So, councillors, you might recall in the report that was received at the ordinary council meeting that the staff provided a detailed breakdown of the economic development budget. So those numbers I've just given are references to, I guess I'll call them cost centres because that's what I'm familiar with. Item 3, and the final item being reduce the economic development budget by $50,000 per annum after the financial year 25-26 in the long-term financial plan. Councillor Allison, was there an end point for that $50,000, or was it just for the duration of the long-term financial plan? Yeah. So perhaps Carrie and Fiz, if you just wanted to digest that for a moment, and then I'll take advice on whether to deal with it here or as a separate item.
To the chair, I've got one question. That $50,000 is on the top of 150, or is it going forward? So 150 in the first year and 50. Okay, thank you.
Of course, yep.
What we do.
All right. Thank you. So having discussed it with the CEO, I can see no reason not to accept this motion without notice, given it's relevant to the topic at hand in the meeting. That said, the advice that I've got is that the effect of the motion would have a material impact on what's being presented here this evening. So that means, on that basis, that if this is what we want, or what the council wants, then the plan that we would be voting on this evening is not the same plan that would be going out to community consultation. So I'll come back to process in a minute, Gary, in terms of how we manage that. Councillor Allison, is that something so effectively what we would be doing is perhaps adjourning this or voting it, then dealing with this, but we would have to come back notionally in 2 weeks, the CEO advises me, to consider again the annual business plan.
Through the chair, I'm happy to put it wherever you feel that it needs to fit in. I'm just going back from the February meeting where it was discussed and there was a motion for the 600,000 that didn't. So I was just putting something else forward in case something else came up. So
yeah, and I think that's okay. I guess all I'm saying is, in order for this to be properly considered, then it needs to be modelled in all of this. There has been a lot of work sort of put into this already, but there's no reason for me not to accept what you're putting forward. So, Carrie, in terms of how we actually manage that, given the advice the CEO has given me, I mean, are we voting on this recommendation or are we effectively adjourning it now again?
Yeah, so you can't adjourn an item that hasn't been moved. So what I would actually recommend is if it's going to wait to be modelled again, then there's probably no point putting up a motion to move or second, and you therefore wouldn't adjourn. It would just come back as another report to another meeting with an update.
So how do we actually deal with this then in that sense? We just don't.
This just nothing.
It just falls away.
Happens and it goes away. That I would suggest that that gets taken by the administration and they work on that.
But does this get voted on this evening as a motion without notice for the staff to go away and talk and deal with? Yeah.
If you want to put a motion on notice up, that it might just have to be tweaked to say to
provide to consider in the annual business plan.
And then brought back to council further modelled.
Okay, Councillor Allison, is that what you want? You're happy with that? Councillor, is there any other comments on that? I think it's really important that we try and make this as seamless as possible. So if we're coming back again in 2 weeks, I don't really. I'd prefer that we don't sort of deal with things at the last minute. So, any comments on that, Councillor Fabio?
If it's in 2 weeks' time, I'll be an apology. Stating that now, I won't be able to vote. I'll chime in, but I'll be interstate.
Yep, I believe I've got some travel too, but I can deal with that separately. Councillor Dean?
I haven't seen the motion yet, and I can't remember what was in it. Are we going to have a look at it?
Yep.
Sure, Corey and Carrie, if you could do that.
And then just above that. Yep. Yeah.
Right, councillors, so there is a motion up on the screen, which is substantially the same motion that I read a short time ago, with some minor amendments. So having considered the process and discussed it with the CEO, the preferred approach now is that the staff will go away and model the effects of councillor Allison's motion, and then bring it back to the council, presumably with any amendments then to the annual business plan that this has, for us to consider at a date to be advised, but mostly in around 2 weeks. Councillor Allison, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think, thank you through the chair. So as I was just saying that back in February, councillor Simon put through about a $600,000 reduction. And I don't think that that got put anywhere within the budget. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. So that was just, I was just coming back with a minimal reduction as a difference to councillor Simon's 600 that went through in February.
Thanks, councillor Allison. Hafiz, just to round out what councillor Allison said there. So was there was no reduction to the budget arising from that report that council received?
Through the chair, no, we haven't incorporated that resolution at all. And the reasons for that was discussed in the prior meetings by the CEO. And,
Yeah, some of the reasons were set out in the report. So that's fine. Where was I going next? Sorry, do I have a seconder for this motion?
Yes. 9 years.
you can see into the last year.
Councillor Allen.
Just to clarify, in the first year, it's 150. And then for the next 9 years, it's 50.
Councillor Fabio, thank you. Councillor Fabio, would you like to speak to it? Thank you. Councillors, would anyone else like to speak on the motion on Councillor Allison's motion? Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mayor Michael. I would like to speak against the motion. We have on this council no one who has a direct involvement, as far as I can see, with tourism. That's an important part of our council area. We've got to make decisions and govern for the entire council area. And therefore I'm opposed to this because I think it is unfair on one section of our ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm, the parts of this motion I think are fine, but I think we've had the opportunity to have this motion come up. It's a bit like last year, things are coming up at the last minute. I'd much prefer to have have had a, well, we're not going to vote. We're going to ask for a report, which I think is important, but I think it's, we've had this opportunity. I don't like Section C, reduce the economic development budget by 50,000 every year. Well, over 10 years, you expect the economic development budget to go up over that 10-year period. So how can you expect it to go down every 50,000? So it's a very difficult thing to ask any body to do. It just seems, I mean, I get the idea, let's cut their funding, but to say that, it's a very, how do they look at that? Do we have to, must be the same expenses now, less 500,000 in 10 years' time? I mean, it's just, I think it's a bit too restrictive. And, we've had the opportunity, we've had the report come back explaining why the costs were. They did highlight pieces that we could take off their budget. That was explained. So it's really the timing of this, I think, is difficult. And I really can't support it because I'd like to think we can get going and we give the budget a good flowing procedure.
Thank you, Councillor Bill. Councillors, would anyone else like to speak on this motion? Councillor Simon.
Yeah, I think, thanks to the chair, I think you guys would know my position to a certain degree, but on the other hand, I do agree with Councillor Bill. It's probably it might be a bit late in the piece. I'm a bit in two minds because we started, I started this quite early in November and we just didn't get anywhere. So I sort of understand that that this comes up now again. It's but on the other hand, it is a bit late, so I'm a bit lost, to be honest. So that's probably all I can say at this point. I'm not sure yet which way I'm gonna vote.
All right, any more comments?
Can I? Just-
Hafiz, then councillor Collin.
Sorry, through the chair, I'm not gonna involve into the decision, but I'm just gonna make things a little bit easier for the elected members. You see the 50,000 from year 2 onwards, the elected members will have the opportunity to consider that when we do the budgeting next year. So technically speaking, we're talking about the point number A, basically in real terms. That's all. I'm not gonna say yes or no. I'm just trying to break it down that, you know, the elected members will get the opportunity about the $50,000 from when we do the budgeting next year. But that 150 is the one that, yes, it's gonna impact next year. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's important comment to make, Hafiz. But also, I guess this will be reflected in the long-term financial plan for community consultation. But you're right. I guess it's within council's right to consider that again next year. Are there any other questions or comments? Anyone? Sorry, would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Collin.
I'll vote for it only because I wouldn't mind knowing what material effect it's going to have in the budget. But one point that I can see Alison's done is that it was pointed out in the report last meeting that there wasn't direction given by the previous motion that we had. This is actually given direction of where to take the money out. So in that regard, it's, you know, whether we support this in the future, who knows? The budget's still going to go out for public consultation. And, you know, we've got a bit of wriggle room still. So it is a bit of a late call, but I wouldn't mind knowing. So I'll be supporting.
Thank you, councillor Collin. I think almost everyone has spoken. So in that case, sorry, councillor Simon.
Can I have one more question? So if it will go for this, then we get a report back. Does that require an extra special meeting to make that decision? So we're going to have to all gather again just to solve that or resolve that?
Yeah, so just to clear that up one more time. So the advice I've been given is that this will have an effect on the services that the council is representing to the community it's going to provide, because it does deal with a very specific area of the economic development budget. And on that basis, a report would need to come back to council on how this motion is implemented, but also the annual business plan would need to come back to council, and on that basis, it would have to be a special council meeting. Yep. Councillor Collin.
Why is that? Why can't we? Why can't this go out as it is, and this is reflected in the meantime?
Well, look, I think I'll let the staff answer that question. Yep.
Thank you, through the chair.
Just a second, I'll just let Carrie speak, councillor Dean, if that's okay.
Through the chair. So it's going to have a impact on the budget. So what you're putting out to public consultation is, the request was that it goes out to public consultation with these changes in it. So they need to be modelled and then brought back to council for then council to adopt, for that version to go out for public consultation.
So just to remind everybody that the recommendation 3.2 contemplates that the annual business plan as presented goes out subject to very minor formatting, grammar changes and things like that. What we're doing here is that removing money from a very specific area of economic development. And so to the extent that any representations are made in the business plan about what we're delivering in that area this year, that would need to flow through the business plan and the report. Councillor Dean.
This change is clearly a material change, not just a minor one. So, because it does affect the specific areas you mentioned, therefore, it really, if it's not part of what goes out public consultation, then we're sort of springing a last minute surprise on them, aren't we? And that's not necessarily good governance.
Councillor Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Michael. So I'm assuming if it goes through, at the next meeting, you'll have to give us the current budget plan as is and an alternative budget plan with the exclusions. So we'd get two budget plans to look at the next meeting to get to one with it included and one without included. That's the way I read it.
Through the chair, if it gets carried, then obviously myself and the staff, we have to remodel this. We have to obviously incorporate that impact of that. And then we have to bring the whole report, annual business plan, long-term financial plan again for the same purpose that we are all together today. Like, to get it endorsed before it goes for public consultation. And that 21 days will not start until after the fortnight when we have that meeting and it gets endorsed. After that, the 21 days is going to start.
Yeah, I understand that. But what I'm saying is we will again look at this inclusion at the next meeting as a separate budget plan to the current budget plan that's there now, which we will also look at. So we'll be choosing between the two annual budget plans. Because it says it's the inclusion to bring a further report. We're not saying we want this. We're saying we want it reported on.
If I can, my understanding of what we'd be deciding on here, Councillor Bill, is this motion, if passed, would have the effect of instructing the staff to make those changes to the budget or produce a report on how those reductions will be implemented. And presumably that would mean an accompanying annual business plan reflecting whatever changes can be made. I don't think we would have two versions of it. Well, I guess we'd always have the one that we had here tonight. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. Yes, correct. Yep, that's my understanding. Yep, we've still got the one we've got tonight, and then whatever comes in circa 2 weeks is, yep. Councillor Collin.
I've just got another question, but a different subject. But I was actually going to suggest that we borrow some money, but obviously the budget process is too far down the road now to suggest such a thing. Is that what? Because I wouldn't mind actually getting Ebenezer Road, because I see we were going to borrow 3.5. We decided to borrow nothing for this financial year. Because I was sort of thinking if we did say Ebenezer and Broughton Road, that's 1.5 million, which is, it would round it up to $10 million borrowing for this financial year. But obviously I can't introduce that because it's too late. Is that the same effect as this? Is it?
I'd like Dawkins Road done too. And
the point I'm trying to make is, Bill, we sat here once, talked about the money, or the debt, and we didn't, we didn't really get a lot of. But I look at a road like Ebenezer Road, which Adrian Hoffman and quite a few others that do tourism there want it done. So I just thought we could bring it back, but obviously I've missed the only opportunity we did have was last meeting.
I'll let Richard, is it Richard or Connor that's going to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. I think certainly I would say if we're remodelling, now's the time. We don't want to be thinking extra work in a fortnight. But I think it would need to be extremely clear direction if there is that direction and if there is those projects that are wishing to be included.
Yeah, so, but ideally you wouldn't want it to bring it in this late. So is that I didn't think it was too late, but I must have misread the room a bit.
I think the point being made before was that we adjourned this decision for a week for the specific purpose of council considering in further detail what was in the report. The purpose for coming here tonight was to make a decision on what was put forward to us, not necessarily to make material changes. There's no one stopping you, councillor Collin, from making those suggestions. And now that we may or may not be coming back to consider this report, I guess to Richard's point, if there are other desires, I would strongly encourage everyone to provide very specific requests to the staff as soon as possible. Should we get to a point where we're effectively coming back to do this again in 2 weeks. I don't think we want to be making more changes in if we are coming back, we need to deal with this motion that's on the screen. If we are coming back in 2 weeks, we don't want to be making those changes again. So I guess returning then to councillor Allison's motion. Are there any, would you like to close the debate, councillor Allison? No? In that case, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? And I'll allow the report. Thank you. Councillor Dean? I had the casting vote in favour of that motion. Yeah, sure. Councillor Dean's called for a division. So for those who voted in favour of the motion, can you please stand behind your chair? Okay, thanks everyone. You can sit down. Councillor, sorry, are you? Yep, Councillor Collin.
If I was to bring forward Ebenezer and Branson Road, I'd have to put up another motion, would I, to do that?
I'll take advice from the staff, but given the effect of the previous motion is that the second motion recommendation is probably redundant. All I would suggest is that if councillors have desires for things to be included in what will now be a somewhat remodelled budget, to provide those to the staff as soon as possible and not at the next meeting.
But I think you have a problem with that, because if we do that, we've already agreed not to borrow any money in this financial year. So my proposal would be to borrow $1.5 million, bring Ebenezer and Branson Road in the forward in the projects. So that would have a material difference on the for next time. So it'd have to be dealt with now, so then it could be embedded into the future budget, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we're not voting on the budget tonight, but I'll maybe let Hafiz.
Yep, through the chair. I just would like to add that obviously the current model that we have got is based on CPI only. If we bring any significant projects in the year one and borrowing, it may have an impact on the operating result of the budget, and that means we have to make sure the financial sustainability. Yes, you can do that, but whether that's financial sustainable or not, I can't answer that question until I've modeled it, because then we're going to go back to the same discussion about increasing the rates or adding more to that on the top of the revenue bucket in order to incorporate, in order to achieve the operating surplus. So, but again, yes, you can do that, but whether that's financially sustainable or not, I cannot confirm that at this stage until I've modeled that into the new version of the annual business plan, long-term financial plan.
But I think at the time you told us 12 million was financially sustainable. So
Yeah, that's right.
we're doing the 8.5 plus 1.5 is 10. So we're still 2 million inside of what you first proposed on the first night. So that's why I got the idea that 1.5 would actually be sustainable, because we're advised that 12 was sustainable.
Yep.
So I think we're well inside the range.
Yeah. Through the chair. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, through the chair, I think what's we should make clear to people is there is no decisions on borrowing or anything otherwise. It has simply been an indication that elected members have provided to enable the budget to be constructed the way it is. If that assessment is incorrect, or if there's further changes to be made, as I say, pull the thing to pieces now. Put in there what you want, make it very clear, and if it is a motion without notice, because we will be going away and we will be starting and adding those things in. If it's borrowing, it is remodeling the borrowing and loan scenarios over the next 10 to 15 years and the impact that has on the long-term financial plan.
Yep.
All of that will need to be done. So if that is the case, I beg that you do it now.
Yeah.
So we're not coming back every fortnight to make changes to a document that largely tonight was bedded down a fortnight ago.
Yeah, I totally concede what you're saying, and I agree that this is, if I'm proposing this, but we got a choice of borrowing as quite short notice. I've had a lot of people talking to me about Ebenezer Road. I see it's going to be resealed in a few years. I out of good conscience think it should be done. So I've presented it here tonight. I'm not trying to be disruptive or anything like that. I'm trying to do the best thing for the people who live on that end of the Barossa, who use Ebenezer Road and the Branson Road. Also, all the dust goes over the town of Greenock. So they're the two roads. It fitted in with about the 1.5, got to the 10. I thought it wasn't too bad, but if no one agrees with it, I don't mind. But if a motion will get it there and it gets voted down.
Yeah, I don't think there's any suggestion about that you're being disruptive, Councillor Collin. I think all we're saying is that change would have a material impact on what is being presented here, and so like it's not listed in the annual business plan. To his point, needs to model it. So I can take a motion without notice that's included in the remodeled business plan that comes back to us, if that's what you'd like to do, Councillor Collin.
Yep, I'll do that. Yes, please.
Councillor Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move Dawkins Road. I mean, Ebenezer's put out till 9 years. Dawkins Road is 4 years. So why should Dawkins Road, which is a tourist area, gets a huge amount of traffic at the moment, why should that miss out when you want to do that? I mean, I'm going to fight for my southern region of the council. I mean, we've agreed to this plan has come up. We can go on fighting about it, but it needs to. If we're going to work it, we need to go by the long-term financial plan, and when the work was done. Not choose to say, let's bring something that's 9 years ahead.
Just to be clear on that, so Councillor Collin, are you suggesting that Ebenezer Road should be completed in the next financial year?
Yeah, bring it forward. But anyway, you can say that, Bill. But there's a lot of roads in the long financial this year that weren't even the long financial plan 5 years out. So there's been a lot of roads brought forward. So you bring up your road.
Sure, I mean I agree. There's lots of roads that are there. But we've got to work to a plan. The council's got to work to a plan. They've got to do, be structured about the way they do it. And we've agreed to this presentation they put forward to us previously. We can't suddenly say we want to bring something that's 10 years in advance and bring it back.
I don't know how good your memory is, Bill, but how many times I've brought up Ebenezer Road since I've been on council? I brought it up nearly all the time. So it's not a surprise. If it's a surprise to you, well, it shouldn't be, because I've said it a lot of times. So it is a very important road, and you know, it just fitted the figures, but if no one else wants to do it, it will go to a vote and it gets voted down.
Yeah, and to that point, so to try and keep within our meeting procedures and keep this meeting on track. So councillor Collins, are you going to move the motion without notice about the level of borrowing and the roads that you would like to see funded through that borrowing? And then it'll be open to councillor Bill to perhaps move his own motion or seek an amendment.
That's right.
Richard, sorry, yep, Richard.
Yeah, and just through the chair, I think in terms of borrowing and those sort of things, that will simply be something that comes back as to how we fund. And I think we probably need to just think about that separately. This is actually effectively in the previous report. We're effectively adding $1.5 million onto a report that we've just adopted. So we can probably craft the report along those lines. I don't think we cloud this at the moment with borrowing because I think we will simply model the additional roads in, and what borrowing happens, and what doesn't need to happen won't happen. I think what you're saying is you've got two roads that you would like to motion to simply go, they need to be in the 25-26 program. That's what I heard. Is that correct?
Yeah, but
We'll.
I think the report will talk about, yeah.
The annual business plan will determine what that actually looks like.
Councillor Dean.
Just a point of clarification. If we pass Councillor Collins' motion, that's going to be modelled as what it will look like in the annual business plan and what effect that have on the long-term financial plan. And that would be Alison's motion would as well. And then we can see what impact. I'd really like to see what impact each of those has separately. I don't know whether that's possible or not.
So they will be separate reports, won't they, Richard? But the effects of them, I guess, will be combined.
Through the chair, sorry. I think this report that we've got now, we can have a copy of that. And once we have incorporated Councillors Allison and Councillor Collins' motions into the new version of the annual business plan or the financial plan, then you've got two versions, the version that we have got today and the new version, then you can compare that against it. But I think, in terms of endorsing, we only have to prepare one draft version, which you'll get the opportunity to kind of compare. I'm happy to come here and kind of explain that major impact in those versions. But in terms of endorsing or / adopting, once we have created, you only have to adopt one, not this one. That new version will overwrite this version if it gets endorsed whenever we have the next special meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Simon.
So yeah, so then it opens another question for me. So what if, because we only then will get two versions. So what if, that's just purely hypothetical. If I think, yes, I want Councillor Allison's inclusion, but I don't want Councillor Collins' inclusion, and that wouldn't work. So it just makes it, this seems to get out of hand here, become really, really messy really quickly. And I'm sort of a bit worried about that, to be honest. So.
Okay, so I think what we need to do is deal with, so Councillor Collins moved his motion. So I'll ask for people to speak on the motion in a moment. Take on board your comments, Councillor Simon. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Collins' motion? Or we'll just wait for it to be finished. Councillor Dean, and would you like to speak to it, Councillor Dean?
I take Councillor Bill's comments into account, but I agree with Councillor Collins. Ebenezer Road does need to be done. I'm not so sure about Branson Road, but the number of complaints that we get about Ebenezer Road with good arguments is quite high. And I think its location currently probably could be in the plan, could be improved. So I'd like to see it modelled. I don't necessarily say I'll support it after I see it modelled, but I'd like to see it modelled so we can, we have information at our fingertips that will help us to decide.
Sure. Thanks, councillor Dean. Councillors, would anyone else like to speak on this motion? Councillor Collin, would you like to close the debate?
Yeah, so going by the plan, Ebenezer Road's 1.25 million, Branson Road's only a short patch. Most of it already is bitumen, but it does affect quite a few people in Greenock because there is dust that blows off it, and the prevailing wind takes the dust over the town. So it's more for not just for the road users, but for the residents of Greenock. It does affect their livelihood or their lives. So that's why I've included these two roads. I think they're important. You know, if you don't agree with it, I don't mind, but I think, and I do take Bill's point, there are a lot of roads that do need doing, and I think we're getting through a lot more roads than we have in the past, but I think these two are ones that I'd like to see done, like to see modelled.
Councillor Simon?
And just one more question for clarification for myself. Branson Road, if I look at Branson Road, I've driven there a few times. So if it's about the dust and protecting the towns, and it's only a very short stretch of Branson Road, not the entire length of Branson Road, or you're talking about the entire thing? It's
160,000 is budgeted in the budget to do the short piece. So that will complete, it will be all black for the whole extent of the road. At the moment, there's a broken piece, and it's where it is where the dust goes over the town. So all we are doing is filling it all up.
All right. In that case, I'll put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. The motion is carried. All right. Then we're moving past now item 3.2 effectively. Yep. So councillors, that brings us to the end of the agenda. I just want to reiterate the request from the staff that if there are things that councillors would like to see in the annual business plan and long-term financial plan that will be brought back to us notionally in 2 weeks' time, now is the time to make those requests, not in 2 weeks and not the day before. Are there any other requests to be made? Councillor Lynette? Yes, you do. Yeah, and yep. Thank you, Councillor Lynette, and I'm aware of your motion without notice. We'll deal with that too. But just before we move off, so the motions that have been presented. Sorry, Councillor Bill. Lynette, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Lynette, wouldn't mind turning your microphone off for a sec. Or did you have a request about the budget? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, I'll get to that. I just want to close out the discussion on the budget. So, Councillor Bill?
Yeah, I'd just like to request that Dawkins Road be brought forward from its current position in the long-term plan.
Okay, so can you be specific for benefit of Carrie and Corey about how you'd like to see that done?
Do I need to be specific, Richard, or is it? I do?
I think if I can pick up what you're saying is it would be the same as the resolution that was there, Councillor Collins, but you would like one that says the Dawkins Road between.
Yeah, that'd be right. But I'm be fair and reasonable. I'll go for 2 years. So I can go the next year.
Thank you, councillor Bill. So I think what councillor Bill is saying, he's happy for that to be included in the long-term financial plan for year 2, if I understand it correct.
Yeah, in financial year 26, 27, isn't it? And for between Wilkinson Road and Goodger Road.
Yeah, so effectively we're amending the long-term financial plan for this one, for
Yeah.
your request, yep. Thank you. Councillor Bill, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'd just to say that Dawkins Road is a tourist road now. It has a huge amount of tourist traffic 5 days a week, so it needs a better road than it's currently got.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, councillor Bill. Thank you, councillor Fabio. I second it. Would you like to speak on it, councillor Fabio? Terrific. All right, councillors, would anyone else like to speak to the motion, to councillor Bill's motion? Councillor Bill, would you like to close the debate? No, in that case, I'll put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillor Bill. All right then, councillors, so we've dealt with all of the amendments that council is seeking to the annual business plan and the long-term financial plan. Councillor Lynette, you had a motion without notice. Sure, once it's up on the screen, yeah. All right. So councillor Lynette's motion reads as follows: that council commend the staff and general managers for their organisation and involvement during the vice-regal visit of Her Excellency the Honourable Frances Adamson AC, Governor of South Australia, on Monday the 28th of April 2025, and particularly commend the Chief Executive Officer for his comprehensive coverage and leadership during the tour, which will take Light Regional Council out to the world through the upcoming overseas tours. May I make one minor suggestion that we also refer to Mr. Brunton in the motion? Other than that, thank you, Councillor Dean. We also received feedback from the Governor's office this afternoon, highly commending the staff and Kylie as well for her efforts. And I thought it was a particularly well-run event that positioned us very well. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you're putting up there, Councillor Lynette. Would you like to speak to it any further, Councillor Lynette?
I think it says it all. It was so very well supported by the staff, the amount they did, and under Richard's leadership, it was just quite amazing. And everybody, as you know, the governor thought it was one of the best ones that she's ever had to go to, and she was so friendly and so she was just an ordinary person, and which I found quite charming. Yes, I did. I think her husband, he's a physicist, so he's no mug either. He knows what he's doing as well. And I just think anybody that was there, any of the elected members that were there, would have been proud of our staff because they put everything into it non-stop. Every section we went to, they worked on, and it was really good. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, councillor Lynette. If you wouldn't mind with your microphone too. Sorry, who seconded? Councillor Dean, would you like to speak on it?
Yes, thank you. I endorse everything Lynette said. I attended all of the sessions and what impressed me was not only the seamless organisation which Lynette's spoken about, but the choice of things that we looked at and got involved in actually sold our region exceptionally well, I think. And it was a good variety, interesting, and it was obvious that she was engaged the whole time, and I was too. And, it was really first class.
Thanks, councillor Dean.
The thing, when we went to the art gallery, there was a door that only had 2 doors, and I was trying to get through that single door, and she said, "Hang on, I'll open it for you," and she opened it for me to go in. And afterwards, when we were talking, she said about how she acknowledged Gavin Schuster's talk on what was it? Chew the Fat, and she said she could understand that. She recognised that, and then afterwards she said to me, her sister is very, very bad with nerves and that sort of thing, and that sort of, you just didn't expect to get that response from somebody right up there. She was just amazing. I thought she was amazing anyhow.
Yeah, thanks, councillor Lynette. And we should also recognise that event that was put on by the Barns of Freeling. I think it was a very well delivered event. The governor was very engaged, got to meet and network with a lot of people, and I think that was very well run as well. So thanks to them. All right, councillors, would anyone else like to speak on this motion? In that, sorry, we did have a second. It was councillor Dean. Yep, it's up there. I'll put that then to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That motion is carried unanimously, and well done, councillor Lynette, for putting that forward. All right, I think that brings us then to the end of our agenda. The next meeting will be, to be advised, will be a special council meeting to consider the annual business plan, the next ordinary council meeting being Tuesday the 27th of May. Declare the meeting closed at 6:16 p.m.